Well, here I am back on the store and the tree. Even though I'm calling this railings and road, I've got a lot to do here in terms of the detail of the tree and little twigs and so forth. And I can see all of the area that's been protected. And it has essentially white lines everywhere. And I need to kind of fill this out, and I need some dark accents. One of the things that this seems to be lacking are dark tones. There's a lot of mid-tones and lighter areas, but there aren't a lot of deep shadow areas, and probably won't occur in that section of the tree, but maybe in the background I'm going to have to address that in the water, or possibly some shadows on the roof of the building, wherever they can be added. I think it will help, because there's just a few spots in the painting really that have some deep, rich, dark, shaded areas, and I think that would be a big benefit. So I'm working with a pretty small brush here, and what this represents is part of the tree that's actually, I don't think it's necessarily dead, but it's not bearing a lot of leaves, and there's a lot of twigs, and there's a big tangle of them that hang down from this section of the tree. It's kind of with the lower part. So I'm going to intertwine them as much as I can, and they're going to overlap, and they're going to cover part of the building. And from the perspective up on the hill, looking down at all of this, this is what I saw, and it covered part of the pilings out for the ferry landing, and it covered a lot of the water, and it was a gigantic tree. But one nice thing about painting trees and working with natural areas is you don't have to be too strict about, super accurate with your detail, because it's fairly random to begin with, and if you change it, no one's going to know the difference. A limb can go any way it wants, and any way you want to paint it. The only golden rule, of course, is it has to be thicker at its base and taper as it goes out, which is pretty easy to do with these little brushes. It's like a number 2 liner brush here. And I'm going back to my palette frequently to get other, a variety of mixes, and pulling that across and sketching in little twigs as I go along. So a lot of this is similar to drawing, but you're just wielding a paintbrush and little different loads of color. So this will proceed for quite a bit of the intro here, and then I'll move on to painting on the road and the railing, which are suggested in the title. But at this point, I think it's best to speed this up a bit, put on some music, and proceed from there. Well, I'm kind of on the stretch run here, and I've been doing a lot of the vegetation around this fence and little tree, a little shack, and another one of my objectives was to darken some of the mid-tones, put a little deeper values in, where I have some areas painted that I like, but they're just not popping, and I need a little more contrast, a little more depth. So I'm going back in and darkening some of those places. You can tell that I've been using the masking material, and I've removed most of it at this point. I use it for the grasses sometimes, or if, for example, the top of the railing on the fence, you don't want to get that dark or get it to the point where you have to scrape or something. So I'll use some of the masking fluid on there. A little bit in the tree too on the right. But having done all that, I'm pleased with the painting. It's getting down to finalizing, and one of the things I'll be doing is going back through and kind of blending out some of the white that I've left that are little specks of white that don't make much visual sense. Of course that happens in watercolor. You're going to have that effect, but too much of it is kind of distracting. It almost looks splattered or something. So I'll go back and touch up some of those things, and I'm going to have to take a little time away from the painting and then come back to see, if anything is catching my eye that shouldn't be, or anything needs attention. You can go forever on the detail of these trees, and I don't know that I ever want to paint another madrona. But I like the finished product, so it was worth it. The painting is large, and I'm going to be at the end showing the full frame. I can't even do it with my camera mounted up above my drawing table. So I'm going to have to set up and create another space so that I can get the full thing in. It's pretty big. Well, it's my typical size, which is 22 by 30, and with my camera, the Vixia Canon that I'm using, you have to be, I don't know, probably 5-6 feet away at least to get that kind of area in full frame, which I'm not able to do with this particular setup. So that'll be a simple adjustment, I'll put that in at the very end, and you'll be able to see this thing, the full composition. I like the sky a lot, which has been covered up this entire time because I'm afraid of splatters, and rightly so, because I kind of start flicking occasionally when I'm working on grasses and things, greenery, and then if you get a speck on a very light blue patch of sky and it settles in, well, what do? It's not easy. You can dab at it. You can try to delicately remove it with maybe a X-Acto knife blade or something, but none of those things really work all that well. You can't really paint over it. with white or something. So that's the danger, and that's why I use a cover. You know, I'll use some sort of like wax paper or something to protect, and I'll keep it on there the entire time I'm working on lower sections. So I go to, that's part of the reason also that I go top to bottom, because it keeps my arm out of it for the most part. And it also kind of helps so that you can, after you finish a portion of your work, you can mask it off. The same thing's true of the water, though, and some of those other light places, like on the landing, the ferry dock landing and stuff. I have to be kind of careful that I don't splatter in there as well. So this has been a good, fun one, and one of the things I did that turned out to be a pretty cool resource is I went on Google Earth, and I wasn't able to find a lot of good resource photos for, even though I'd been to this place, and I have my own, but some of them weren't great. And I found on Google Earth that you could go and look at what other people had done, use their photos to an extent. I mean, at least for reference, to see, if there's a detail that you didn't capture or you don't quite understand or whatever, you can look at what other people have done. And so there have been people that have taken a couple of shots right from this very spot. Well, within, I don't know, 20 yards, 30 yards. And they're not looking at a ferry approaching, but they show the store, and, so it was all really helpful. So I am pleased to say that I'll be moving on to a next project, and I want to thank everybody for hanging in there with me. And I'm going to be putting more music on and take it to the end. And then, as I mentioned, there's going to be a few full frame photos, and I'll be showing you some more of the detail of the work. So that will cap it off. So adios, and I'll see you on the next one.